Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mic's already on. Go ahead, get comfortable. Make sure you're speaking into the mic. Whenever you're addressing one of the parties, feel free to move around. Just make sure you move the mic with you.
Okay.
Go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, are you the same Lee Gallentine that provided direct testimony and 2 exhibits on behalf of Hardin County in this matter? Yes, I am. And if you were asked those same questions today, would your testimony be substantially the same? Yes, it would. I will offer at this time this witness's direct testimony and Gallentine exhibits 1 and 2.
Are there objections?
No objections.
Seeing none, the board will admit.
Your Honor, prior to tendering the witness, I did this morning file an additional 1-page exhibit marked at Gallentine Exhibit 3. I have copies here to distribute, and with the board's permission, I'd like to lay some foundation and then offer that exhibit.
Please do.
Would it be appropriate to lay the foundation while it's being distributed, or should I wait?
Let's just pause for a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gallentine? Yes. You work for Clapsaddler-Garber Associates, correct? Yes, I do. And Hardin County has designated Clapsaddler-Garber and Associates as their designated inspector for this pipeline project, correct? Yes, we have a letter of a memorandum of understanding with Hardin County. All right, and are you, I guess, the primary or the primary face or person that is working with the county in that respect? Yes, I am. And in that capacity, you've become acquainted with who Turnkey Logistics is? Yes, I am acquainted with the company. And as project inspector, you're aware that you've become aware of any permit applications or efforts made by Summit related to the project, correct? Yes. And is Exhibit 3, does it document some permitting efforts in middle of August of this year by Summit related to this project? Yes, it does. I have no other foundation questions I'd offer at Gallentine Exhibit 3.
Are there objections?
Yes, Your Honor, we would object on both foundation and relevance. Mr. Gallentine is neither the sender nor the recipient and not named anywhere in the correspondence. The correspondence appears to address a permit for a capture facility, which is not something that the board permits, so it actually is not involved in this particular case.
Thank you. The objections noted. The board will admit and give the evidence the weight due.
With that, I will tender the witness.
Okay. Mr. Whippel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple questions for you, Mr. Gallentine. Were you here earlier for the county's inspector, Mr. Kruzenga? Did you?
Yes, I was.
And you listened to his testimony?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Kruzenga testified that he didn't personally have any concerns on behalf of his firm about any liability for halting construction, but I guess I'm wondering, since you're with a different firm, if you've given the same issue any thought and whether you have concerns about that.
I think liability is always a concern, depending on where you're at in the structure of the company. You're more aware of it. Obviously, the higher up, you have more concerns about liability. With regards to the pipeline and the rules there are now in place for the county inspectors, I mean, they have the right to stop construction temporarily. They don't have the right to stop it indefinitely. I think that's a little bit of a gray area, and I think there's definitely some liability there that could potentially expose that county inspector to lawsuits.
Do you substantially agree with Mr. Kruzenga about the need for clear guidance on wet conditions?
Yes, I think clear guidance would definitely be helpful in wet soil conditions.
Okay, thank you. I want to move on just to a couple questions about drainage districts as well. Are you acquainted with drainage district functions in Hardin County?
Yes, very much so.
Could you just describe briefly first the relationship between county supervisors and drainage districts and how a drainage district is structured? Not a huge amount of detail, please, just a general familiarity for anyone who doesn't know.
Sure. So I'll just start with drainage districts in general. Drainage districts are a entity, governmental entity that was created to satisfy the need of draining primarily ag ground for production and general public welfare.
Objection, Your Honor.
State your objection.
In addition to the usual objection, you have two attorneys for counties both asking the same witnesses questions, but this discussion of what is drainage districts, what's their history, what's their role, is exactly what's in his pre-filed testimony. This is completely repetitive of what is already in the testimony and what's already been admitted without objection.
That's correct, and so I asked him to keep it brief. I'd like to move on to the next question, which is what I'd really like to get at, Your Honor. So
Much appreciated.
we will do that.
Thank you.
So with that having been laid, how are the benefits allocated, or the costs rather, for a project like this among the drainage district owners?
Could you define better what a project like this means?
Well, a pipeline that crosses a drainage district.
So for any project within a drainage district, there has been a classification has occurred, during which time two landowners, disinterested, and an engineer have gone through, determined each 40-acre parcel relative benefits it's received. The most benefit gets 100% benefit. Everybody gets compared to that, and then they come up with a classification schedule, which is essentially how things are paid for. So anything that happens within a drainage district is paid for by the landowners within the boundaries of that drainage district, unless if there's some other form of agreement met or agreed to by an outside party to pay for something. So unless an outside party is paying for it, the landowners within that district will pay.
Last question on this topic for you then. If there were damages or costs to the drainage district infrastructure, how would those costs be recovered by the drainage district? Is it the trustees or the individual landowners? Who sends the invoice and who takes payment when it's paid?
Yes, so typically the drainage clerk or the county treasurer would send out the invoices. They're the ones receiving the payment from the landowners. The district trustees are not don't financially contribute to the drainage district fund.
Okay. One final question about the Exhibit 3 that your counsel just offered. The employee listed on the email, Jay Sheridan, do you know who that is?
Yes, I do know Jessica Sheridan.
That's Jessica Sheridan, and that's a county employee?
Yes.
And what is her role?
I believe she is county sanitarian and zoning officer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gallentine.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Is your firm the county inspector for any other counties besides Hardin County?
Yes, we have a memorandum of understanding with Franklin County also.
Correct. So you have those two counties?
Yes.
Have you been a county inspector, or your firm been a county inspector on any other pipeline projects?
I have not personally, no. Our firm has been around for 60 plus years, and I know they have done it on other projects, yes.
Okay. Maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't then. When the county inspector goes out and sees something being done in terms of construction that would lead to the construction being stopped or something being modified, is it the experience of county inspectors that the construction workers don't want to stop, they want to just keep going?
I would say in general, construction workers never want to stop.
And so does that make it difficult for the county inspectors to do their job?
Yes, because then the county inspector becomes the obstacle to them completing the work. At least in their minds.
Even if, as Mr. Kuzinga said, there was a firm definition of what conditions, would that really solve the problem of the construction workers not wanting to stop?
It wouldn't solve the problems of construction workers not wanting to stop, but it would transfer the inspector from being the obstacle to the rule being the obstacle.
Okay. So even if you had a good firm definition of what conditions and the construction workers didn't want to stop, what would be the outcome of that?
Well, my understanding is the inspector has, per code, the authority to temporarily stop construction. It would be hoped that any contractors or construction workers would respect that authority and stop work. Obviously, the inspector isn't going to stand in front of bulldozers or anything like that.
And we don't expect you to do that.
Yeah, good.
I'm curious about Exhibit 3, which I don't think any of us have seen before. Were you aware, or how did you become aware of this email and this proposed project for a carbon removal?
Attorney Meyer had forwarded on to me.
Oh. Is this something the county inspector would be dealing with?
I don't think the county inspector would be dealing with this per se, because the county inspection role is limited to the pipeline itself. I also serve as the drainage district engineer for Hardin County for the drainage districts that the supervisors are trustees for. So I wear more than one hat in the county. So.
Okay. So if you know, what kind of permit would SCS carbon removal need to obtain from the county for this carbon removal system?
I believe it's a building permit.
Okay.
Many times if a building permit is filed, it'll get forwarded on to the drainage districts and also maybe secondary roads to make sure that they don't have a vested interest that isn't apparent right away.
You mentioned you were the drainage district coordinator, or what was the title?
Drainage district engineer.
Okay. And we've heard a lot of testimony, I won't go over it obviously, but what is the county inspector's job or authority concerning the drainage tile during construction?
Well, the county inspector's authority is to make sure that the ag restoration plan is adhered to, along with any directives that are, let's say, extra or above and beyond that landowners have or vested parties have, such as drainage districts.
So what issues, in your experience, would inform the board on any perhaps conditions to put in a permit that would address the problems you've seen concerning drain tile?
Well, I think that any pipeline should be required to talk to the drainage districts that they are crossing and make sure that they are protecting that drainage district facility in a manner that's acceptable to the drainage district. When you cross a landowner, you negotiate the easement with them, and they have special terms and conditions they want. They can stipulate those at that time. That's great for the tile that's on their field that affects them. Drainage district tiles may affect thousands of acres for remote landowners who weren't ever contacted, weren't ever talked to. And if that tile or open ditch isn't repaired correctly, it impacts their property even though they weren't a party to it. So really those drainage districts need to be contacted, and how those repairs or crossings are handled needs to be negotiated and determined ahead of time, because that isn't above and beyond the restoration plan.
Do you know if Summit has contacted the drainage districts there in Hardin County?
Yes, they have. We met, I believe, starting in March. There is actually an application form. I think it was included as Exhibit 1 that they have filed with the county for, I think, 12 drainage districts that they are crossing.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Jorde?
Yes, thank you. In regards to this liability question, are you stating that if you essentially in your role as inspector were to stand in the way of construction, that there's a risk that pipeline company could potentially threaten a suit or sue the county for their downtime? I'm sure it's potential, yes. I'm not an attorney, but... Well, no, and I'm just getting at the liability piece, though. When you talk about liability, the fear that you're essentially put in the middle of that, is that what you were getting at? Or I don't know if it's fear. I just think it's probably, if there's some limits of liability, there's more reassurance for you to perform your role effectively. I think for anybody to perform their role effectively, yes. So if there was some type of a immunity or kind of hard and fast rule you could hang your hat on, or some combination, that would make you feel more comfortable? Yes. Were you involved at all on the Dakota Access project in terms of inspection duties? I was not. Okay. Have you been made privy to or learned kind of lessons learned from that project of how to potentially do things better in the future? None other than what I've heard here today by others' testimony. Okay. Has that been helpful to learn about how things went wrong back then and how to maybe do better in the future? Very. Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Jablinski?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one question, Mr. Gallentine. Can you point to any lawsuits in Iowa you're aware of where an IUB permitted infrastructure development sued a county inspector or their company?
I am not, but I'm not aware of any lawsuits involving IUB pipelines, so.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, did you have a redirect?
Just a little bit, Your Honor. Thank you. Just want to clarify, maybe just going to give a concrete example, even though it would be hypothetical, it just kind of make it seem more practical. You asked questions and you testified a little bit about how the costs and benefits are shared within a drainage district. Let's assume there's a drainage district with 3 landowners. It's possible that one of those landowners has been determined that they benefit the least from the district. And so their portion would be the least of any costs that are incurred, they would be less responsible. Is that how it works?
Yes, so whoever's deemed to be the most benefited typically pays the most financially. Whoever's deemed to be the least benefited typically pays the least financially. There's also an area calculation in there too, but that's the general gist.
Okay, and if a pipeline goes through one of these districts that only benefits from an easement agreement, one of the landowners, they might end up, because an error or mistake, damage to tile would affect all three, but it would start, I guess, making it harder to work out is the financial arrangements of that, or it could cause tension within the district between the landowners?
Oh yes, quite often the financial arrangements cause tension because most of these classifications for the assessment of benefits are 100 plus years old. And so they've been forgotten by not only people, their fathers and their grandfathers have forgotten them, and so they don't quite understand why they're paying more than their neighbor even though they own the same amount of ground.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Forgot the board again. Sorry. There are no questions from the board, so you may step down. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Meyer, you call your next witness.
Hardin County calls Thomas Creighton.